Like, share, and subscribe to my channel as I continue to provide with trusted information for you to use to make decisions. I have learned a lot in life, and a part of the reason why I've learned a lot in life is that I wasn't taught some stuff, and because I wasn't taught some stuff, I made errors. And by making errors, I was ostracized, terrorized, and it seems as though there are persons who do not overlook or who do not believe that people who have made errors should be forgiven and allowed to continue their lives. What they do is to continuously use things against you, even if, and I want to actually say this part cautiously and clearly, even if you did not really know and erred, it is actually held against you. And as a part of the reason when I see some young persons in life doing some things, I will try my endeavor best to actually reach to them before they actually cascade into chaos and trouble by saying to them, listen, I have made a lot of errors and I've made some errors, and I'm going to use my errors to guide you away from doing some stuff and moving in a direction where you can actually not be ostracized later, not be killed later, not be belittled later because of what I've actually gone through. Now, some years ago, some close to 15 years ago, and I was working in a university. I was actually told to publish some research from some students' work. Now, when I was actually told to do this, I wasn't aware of all the ramifications relating to authorship, particularly, let me use the correct term for it now, plagiarism. So I did some stuff that I did not know the full extent of what I did because I was actually operating in fairness of what I know without knowing that what I knew was far less than what I ought to have known. No, so let's continue with the incident and give you some background to it. And that's why I want to guide persons about this whole issue about plagiarism. After that time, I've actually gone into the discussion of plagiarism, gone into extensive research in it, gone on World Health Organization side, gone on Global Health Network side, have done courses into us try to understand the entire gamut and the extent of the issue and how it is that I need to learn, be informed so I can inform others. So my supervisor at the time said to me that there were some master's paper that I should actually look at because I was actually researching, not using them, never wanted to use them because substantially I was using data from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica given to me by a reputable bank, data bank, to say that I could use them. But I wasn't aware that if I use somebody's thesis and go in the person's thesis and actually take the person's data, that would be constituted as a major blunder, a major crime. So what I did, I went into a number of the thesis, still used the title of the thesis, but this time, because the data was there, I actually used the data and modify some of the data, modify some of the data, and actually publish articles from the data. So the thesis, many of the theses were 100 pages, 70 odd pages, 50 odd pages, etc. And I thought that because I was actually using my own words, I would not need to actually put the person name on all the papers. So what I did is some of the papers that were well written, what I did, I would use the data, use parts of that and give authorship to the individual and myself. So if you actually look online today, you'll actually see a number of papers being done by other persons and myself, or myself and other persons. Some of those things were theses. There are some of them that I did not put the name on it. When I did not put the name on it, during that time that I had actually submitted some of those papers, I submitted quite a number of papers. And my son was diagnosed with diabetes at the time, and he was in hospital, Bustamante Hospital, for about month or maybe a little over a month. Now, he was 6 years old at the time and actually just started grade one, a week into grade one or two. Is that a week or 2 weeks into grade one? My wife got up one morning and realized that he was peeing in the bed and took him up. And when she took him up, he actually moved from about 50 pounds and looked like he was weighing like about 10 pounds. You could see all his rib, all his cheek bones, all his collarbone, etc. So, Jamaicans are Christian like people, including myself. She prayed for him. When she prayed for him, I said to her that for some unknown reason, I would take him to hospital. And she said no, she think it's okay. Now, we had lived on a main road in Stony Hill. So what we would normally do is just to go outside, put him on the bus. He'll actually bus drop him at school gate. He go to school and take by the bus and then come right home. No, I just believe I should actually take him to hospital. But he had this look on his face, and I said, this look does not appear to be somebody who is actually healthy. So I brought him to children. When I brought him to children, he was in coma for an entire day or two, somewhere there. Doctors were confused. No, while that was happening to me, the articles were being published, and a friend of mine actually called me to say, Paul, the articles are published. I think there are some problems. People are saying that you teach them the work and you should try to address them. At the time, I was confused. Quite a lot of things was happening to me in terms of my son, and I was trying to actually deal with life in terms of that situation as well as dealing with what was happening to me in terms of work. So I said to him, okay, then I said to him, this is what I did. And he said to me, Paul, what you should have done in that case was to have either put the person name in the work. And if you have not done so, what you should do is to put the person name in acknowledgement. And I said to him, I wasn't aware of that. I figured more or less that because the data was there and I was using the data, then I will be the author of the paper. And he said, well, Paul, yes, but you should have actually given authorship to the person, one, or two, put the person in acknowledgement. So what I did, I went to the editor of the journal, wrote the editor of the journal, and made the editor of the journal aware as to what I had done. And the editor of the journal said to me, of course, here I'm learning, right? Said to me, well, it is true, but the person does not necessarily need to be an author, but the person should be placed in acknowledgement. It is not something that you should actually be worried about. You should not think of yourself any less about. But next to what you should do is to put the person as an author or put the person in acknowledgement if you so desire, given that you did the work and you used the data. So the editor, I said to the editor, withdraw the paper, and the editor said to me, what I'm talking about is not substantial enough for him to withdraw the paper. And I said to him, please, can you? And he said, no, it is not substantial enough for me to withdraw the paper. And I said, okay. That led up to a number of things that happened after that, where I lost my job. I was actually fired, told not to come back on the compound, and learned a whole lot about that. And then after that, I started reading about this whole idea relating to authorship, plagiarism. I mean, all the ethics relating to that. I started getting myself into that. Now, post that, so I have learned a whole lot. Went in terms of bankruptcy, lost everything, had to go to Seaview Gardens to live. Couldn't afford rent, couldn't afford food to eat because nobody wanted to employ me, a person that saw me as a thief. I explained to those persons who I knew pretty well, and many of them I don't need to call their names, but explain to them what happened. And they said to me, Paul, what you should have done was to have put the person's name in acknowledgement. And I said I wasn't aware. I figured more or less, given that I use the data, I could just work the data and actually do the authorship in terms of myself or any other person who will help me to work on the paper. All right, forget it, publish, I will actually put their names on it. And that actually cost somebody professorship. And right now, I think he resent me a whole lot. because he had told me to put everybody's name on the paper. And I said to him, we had done enough work that I do not think it substantiated putting somebody person's name on the paper. And he said to me, Paul, I don't trust some person. And him not trusting some persons and me being foolish actually cost me a whole lot in life. No, it was after that that I began learning what this authorship and plagiarism is because I was an econ stat student, right? So I wasn't accustomed to some stuff. I knew that if you actually quote somebody's statement, how that should be treated, but I was fully aware of this authorship thing in terms of who is an author, um, how things can be plagiarized, and I wasn't aware that I know that if you actually falsify somebody's data, you would actually be held accountable for and what that cost meant. So I ensured at no point in time that I made an error in terms of my data. I didn't falsify data. I made sure if I'm quoting, I actually do it right. I make sure if I'm paraphrasing, I do it right. But wasn't aware that if I use your data, then you will still be an author in the paper or be actually placed acknowledgement. Wasn't aware of that, was actually held responsible for that and lost a whole lot because of that. Which is a part of the reason why teaching for the past 5 years, I've always spoken to my students about what I went through, told them exactly the importance of not plagiarizing, how to deal with the issue of authorship, how to deal with the issue relating to quoting, how to deal with the issue of actually using data. I've actually brought them to a full and a comprehensive understanding of that because of what I went through. No, there are some persons who have never forgiven me, and there are some persons who still call me thief. There are some persons who still call me a lot of names, and there are some persons who still believe that I have not lost enough, even though I went from living in Stony Hill, nice accommodation, to one where I was living in Seaview Gardens. And at one point, um, the area leader wanted to kill me. So I went from being somebody who was reputable, doing things, to somebody who was dejected, despondent. Everything was not going for me. So I learned a whole lot from that. And there are some persons who think that I still have not paid the price, whatever that price is. I'm not sure, but I believe that I'll pay the price. No, what I'm saying to a number of persons who possibly will hear this and possibly would have made errors in life, try not to make some errors in life. Because the person, when you would have made those errors, will actually see you as being a demon. And for life, they'll actually hold those errors against you. Even if you were not aware that you were making an error, they'll actually see you as a demon, a devil. And because of that, that will actually destroy you a whole lot. Possibly you may never recover from that destruction. No, the irony though is those individuals who are castrating you, belittling you, abusing you, do not see it important to actually, when you have learned after time to decide, listen, allow people to recover, allow people to learn from their errors. And the irony, as I said before, is that when they would have made an error, they want people to forgive them and understand. But when you have made an error, you're the worst thing since sliced bread, or the worst thing since the development of the wheel, or the worst thing since development of sound, or the worst thing since actually understanding that colors can be primary and secondary. No, what am I saying to you is that the issue relating to plagiarism is a is one that is detrimental to one's career. And because it's so detrimental to one's career, I've always said, because of what I went through, pay attention to all these little nuances. And I've ensured that my students actually do a lot of courses in plagiarism relating to authorship, in relation to fabrication, in relationship to quotation, in relationship to citation, in relationship to anything that will actually question the quality of whatever you are doing. Now, what I've done since then is every time that I've worked with a student, the person name is there on the paper as first. And I Sometimes I'm fourth, fifth, last. I don't mind because I have been taught extensively in terms of that. Not only that, what I've also done, what I will continue to do, is if an individual works with me on a paper, even if that person were to read 10 sentences, I've actually ensured that that person becomes an author because I'm not sure the person going to say, listen, I did a lot of work and you didn't put me on the paper, and therefore you're a thief, you're a plagiarist, or therefore this. So I've always ensured that the mistake that I made some time ago is corrected and is always highlighted with those persons I'm working with. And I was actually say to persons who I'm working with, where did you get the data from? And you got the data from somebody. Were you given permission to use the data? And you're given permission to use the data. How should we actually quote the data? I've ensured. So if you read a number of my articles post 2017, when I work with the police extensively in getting their data, I ensured that you may not see JCF or Jamaica Constabulary Force as an author, but I made sure they are cited in the body of my work, which is also one way that I should have done that paper or those papers that I aired with. No, I wasn't aware that using the data meant that you should actually quote it or use the person as a source if you don't want to replace the person as an author or put it an acknowledgement that you got the data from that source. Wasn't aware, learned my lesson. But what I'm saying to you is that these are a number of options, alternatives in terms of this is relating to plagiarism and how do you deal with data, data sources, um, quotations, and there are a number of persons who are not aware of some of these nuances and subtleties. And I'm saying to you, use my errors, learn from me, because you are never forgiven if you make an error without even knowing that you had erred. And when you would have recognized that you had erred, sometimes it's too late for you to correct that one, that error. And for life, you are tarnished, you are labeled, you are blamed. So some person may actually argue that, listen, you were involved in a corrupt practice. No, the thing is, I wasn't involved in a corrupt practice. I wasn't aware. And I wasn't aware that if the data is used from somebody's work, thesis, dissertation, or any other data source, that should either be one, reference in the body of the work, two, piece of acknowledgement, and three, could be given what authorship. Wasn't aware of that. I've learned from that error. Learned a whole lot as well. Suffered immensely because of it. Now, what I'm saying is that the issue relating to plagiarism has actually grown since 15 years ago and today. So a number of things that I aired with 15 years ago, because of that error 15 years ago, and knowing what obtains in terms of the laws, the structures, I keep abreast of all this relating to plagiarism and make my students and even my friends aware of these subtleties and nuances, even if they are not aware, or I bring them up to speed with what is actually going on. Why? Because I have learned and I paid the price to learn. Now, in academics, plagiarism is an offense. But what a number of persons do not seem to understand is that if an individual plagiarizes by not knowing, how do you deal with that? That is dealt with differently from an individual who knowingly does something. All right. No, in my case, I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware of the nuances relating to what plagiarism and paid the ultimate price for that. So I am saying to persons who are actually listening to me, be careful of sometimes not knowing. Authorship must be taken into consideration when you're actually doing a paper, when you're doing research. Because plagiarism, most people think that plagiarism is just deal with falsification of data or the issue relating to quotation, or it also deal with using somebody's work as well. Now, if you use somebody's data, you ought to either put the data as a reference inside the work or put it as a what? Acknowledgement inside the body of the work. Normally, when I'm working, I do not like to use acknowledgements. What I normally do, not use acknowledgements, therefore, is to put people as authors or to use the quotations inside the body of the work, which is also legitimate inside of academic research. Now, for those persons who are listening, understand all the nuances relating to authorship, understand all the nuances relating to plagiarism, so you do not make any errors because per adventure, you make an error. you'll be ostracized for the rest of your life, even when you do not know, because the law say ignorance is no what excuse. So because ignorance is no excuse, I'm held accountable from 15 years ago for something that I did, not knowing that I was doing it. So I'm saying to all other persons who are out there, if you're working with students' work, give them authorship on the paper. I'm not sure you're going to do the authorship, but you want to put them as first author, second author, but authorship should be given. If you are using the data of students, put the students' actually data inside the body of your work as a quotation or the acknowledgement if you do not want to actually put them as an editor of the paper. What I prefer, having learned from my mistake, is that as long as I'm using your data, you're placed inside the body of the work as a source as well as an author, learning from that mistake. So if you see mistakes being made by some persons, a number of persons want to think that students know everything that there is and what is happening with the lecturers, and a number of the lecturers are not guiding the students properly. Something I was never taught some stuff, but I learned them over the time. I learned them from reading, and some person may say, but you ought to have actually known all of these things. And the issue is I did not. And because I did not, I paid the ultimate price for that. So in summary, plagiarism is a critical and an offense that you can be ostracized for life, even when you don't know. And because of that, I'm actually saying to a person, actually, go and spend some time in understanding the full gamut and extent of what plagiarism is, so you do not make any errors. Because I do not want my faith that I suffered 15 years ago to be your downfall today. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel as I continue to provide trusted information for you to use to make decisions. I make errors, and they have cost me a lot. So I do not want you to make an error.